And like we were quite confident about the product, and we wanted this to continue. We did not want that to stop, so we took the hard decision of like leaving our flat to save on some money so that we can continue running the servers. And Farid was like super generous to have us in his office. Now, a pride associated with doing a startup, or hey, my child is doing a startup, or my child is working at this startup, which was not there when I started. Like I had to convince my parents that hey, this is a viable professional option that I have, and this is something. What we realized was that this person is not in the shop all the time, right? And we also have to make our UX in a way that the employee, the chotu, right, which who is in the shop all the time, would understand that the most important thing is to be transparent, right, and tell your employees the reason why you are doing this. I think involving them in decision making is also super important, right? When they feel that hey, okay, I understand the reason why the company is doing this, why this is beneficial for the company in the long run. Yes, we experimented on a certain product or did certain things, but it did not work. And like now we have to change. And why it is important for the company, that's most important for people to understand. When they understand that, then you have to involve them in the decision making process. That hey, now that we are going to make this change, how do we do it?
Hi everyone. In this episode, I get a chance to sit with Harsh Pokharna. Harsh is the co-founder and CEO at OKCredit. We talk a lot about all the ideas that they kind of went through before starting OKCredit, how to really manage a company when it's growing really fast, what it means to be a good CEO, investor expectations, and much more. This episode was actually recorded in 2023, but is heavily edited so that I feel only the timeless parts are kept. I really had a great time recording this, and I hope you guys find this very useful. It's been almost a decade since you've been in the startup space. How would you say the startup space per se has changed in the time that you have since maybe come into it?
One, I think, is that I see so many college students, recent graduates, who are now, like much more confident about starting a company and are getting much more support from their families or whoever, like because people now recognize startups. They have seen the successes. They have seen, and there's now a pride associated with doing a startup, or hey, my child is doing a startup, or my child is working at this startup, which was not there when I started. Like I had to convince my parents that hey, this is a viable professional option that I have, and this is something I want to do. Even I'd seen my friends then, like everyone preferred the security of a job, a brand name, etc., and were not very open to doing startups. What I see now is that those similar friends or those similar people now are quitting jobs and starting their own companies, because now there's a social status attached, there's pride, there's support all around. I think like also like when I started, and like few years after that, there was this crazy amount of money that came into the Indian startup ecosystem, and a lot of ideas were getting funded even at the idea stage, or like a lot of experiments. That is something which I am now seeing, that the money coming into the ecosystem is reducing, and like people are getting the due diligence is getting much harder in terms of people are asking all the questions around profitability and like fundamentals, which they wouldn't ask an early stage startup, say a few years back. But yeah, I think that's happening. But yes, that's a good sign. At least I see that's our startup ecosystem maturing, and the entrepreneurs are also maturing.
If I'm not wrong, you started OKCredit, I think, in 2017.
Yes.
But I think before that, I think you were working at Flipkart, and then I think after 6 months you quit your job, if I'm not wrong.
Yes.
And after that, I think you tried a series of things. You were experimenting, and then could you maybe walk us through a little bit about the things that you tried?
So yeah, there were a lot of things. Initially, when we started, like our basic idea was to learn how to build apps. So a couple of projects that we did then was not really inspired by what's the problem we want to solve. Instead, it was inspired by like we want to learn how to make an app, and this sounds like a good idea. So let's build. So the first startup idea that we worked on was Mishi. It was a way in which I can have your contact card. Say you gave me the permission. So whenever you change your number in the future, my contact book would automatically get the new number. So if I'm calling you, I'm always calling you on your latest number. This is not a big problem now given number portability and stuff. But when we started in 2014, number portability didn't exist. And this was a big problem because a lot of our friends went to different cities. And if we had to reach out to someone, we would have to ask another person, hey, do you have this guy's latest number? We thought that, if we can have a sync in the contacts, right? Like whenever you change, it's updated. So, like that would be a cool product to have. So that's the first thing we worked on. The second thing we worked on was an event platform, right, where you could see what your friends are doing in the city, or what other people are doing in the city, house parties, or like some outdoor stuff or whatever, right? Like what your friends are up to, and if you'd like, you can join that. And so it was a platform because again, this arised that we were in Bangalore for a few years. We had a social circle, but it used to become very monotonous that it's the same circle and we are doing the same things. So we wanted to have a platform where we can see what other people are doing in the city. And
It was
if
at the same time, I think, it was at the same time, I think, where there was a lot of app boom, right? I mean, I think a lot of
yeah,
people
yes,
were coming up with like apps. It
yes,
was, I think, a similar time when I think Geo was also released, was it? Or did that
yes,
come before
yes.
or around that same time? No.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah.
So I know there is this one story where I think I don't know if this is before OKCredit or after OKCredit, where you had to pay for the servers and you didn't have money for, you had to make a choice whether you have to pay for the servers or you have to pay for rent, and then you called up the share chat founder. I think his name is Farhid, if I'm not Farhid,
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
And you guys slept at his office for about 3 months, if I'm not wrong. Could you maybe walk? Was that after you started OKCredit?
Yeah, that was after. So this was in October of 2017. So we started OKCredit in April of 2017. We got our first user, and uh, and things were growing. Like we got our first user, that guy gave us more users, and I would say we had some 100 odd merchants who were actively using us. At that time, we had applied for, and this is another good story. I think I can walk you through later. But we applied for YC, we got rejected, and because we had not worked for a long time in any job, like I just quit my job in Flipkart a long back, so I didn't have a lot of savings. So and same as my co-founder, so we thought that and like we were quite confident about the product, and we wanted this to continue. We did not want that to stop, so we took the hard decision of like leaving our flat to save on some money so that we can continue running the servers. And Farid was like super generous to have us in his office.
Yeah, I mean, that is just an. I mean, to be honest, right? I mean, if somebody would have called me, I really think I would have said no. I mean, I just feel I felt that that was such a nice thing to do. And but I'm really curious about the logistics though. Like, I mean, so you guys would sleep in the office, or like, was there like another room or something like that? Like, how did that
No,
work?
so just the office. So basically, they had a big office, and it was kind of segregated by a room in between. So there was like kind of two areas. So like generally, their team would leave around 10, 11. Only a few people would remain. So once the team had gone, we had sleeping bags. So we would go in the other corner and just lay down our sleeping bags and sleep there. And in the morning, like a certain housekeeping staff and other like one or two more people used to come early and play music. So that was our cue to get up. That okay, the music has now started, and we should get up. We took showers in their washroom before the other employees came, had their food, which was for their employees. But yeah, it was like a really fun time. I miss that.
You're joking, right? I mean, are you being serious right now?
Not, it was fun. It was like that experience taught me that I'm like quite adaptable, right? Like that I can live in any condition, which hopefully like which life throws at us. But I felt that I'm adaptable, and like I was able to adapt in that situation and still work for the startup, and not complain. Neither did my co-founders complain. We understood that it's for a reason.
Did you work there as well in the same office, or?
Yeah, so because we were sleeping there in the office, like so they also gave us like a couple of table chairs so that on the side we can just have our own office and work from there.
Again, I'm curious. Before the OKCredit, where I think you guys were experimenting and doing multiple things, like, were there multiple times that you came close to bankruptcy, or was like money a big issue? And
So many times, I think like it was been around 3 4 times when we were almost about to die, but for some or the other reason, we just stuck to it and got out of those situations. But yes, there have been 3 4 times when we were not die, but I would say that we would have just decided not to pursue startups anymore.
can you talk a little bit about maybe choosing the right co-founders? Like, I mean, how important do you think that is, and what role does it play per se?
No, I think that's the most important thing while starting a startup. If you are looking for a co-founder, then choosing that co-founder is the most important decision that you're going to make.
Even more than the idea, you think, or you think?
Yeah, even much more important than the idea, because honestly, what I've seen is ideas change all the time, because once you have an idea, you go out, you test, you get more insights, and you realize that, hey, this is something more we can do. This is a pivot that we'll make. But ideas change all the time. But once you have a co-founder, that's not going to change. It's like marriage. It's Yeah, I think that's the most important decision you are going to make, like more important than the market, more important than the idea, more important than anything else.
I think you started in April or March, and then by October you had about 100 merchants signed up.
Yes.
How do you scale from there? Like, how difficult was it to grow from maybe 100 to 1,000 and maybe a million from there?
I would say, see, the toughest was get doing the 0 to 1 and say 1 to 10 or 10 to 100, because that is when we were finding our product market fit, making our product, going out in the market, talking to users, and doing a lot of stuff. But once we had the product market fit, at least for a while things got easier. Not, I wouldn't say easy, but relatively easier.
Is it difficult? Was it difficult to kind of what is that? Convince people to maybe adopt the tech, or?
Yes, yes, yes. So I think like the first, I have a story on the first user, right, whom we convinced, and like that guy, like we've been, he was a grocery store right outside our apartment, right? So we had a long relationship with him. We had been taking credit from him for 2 to 3 years, right? And we just came across this problem, and Aditya one day said that like every time I go to pay to that shopkeeper, he tells me a random amount, and I'm not sure if that's true. And I have to wait in line and all of those things. We went to the store owner. We told him that, hey, this is a problem we face. He said it's a bigger problem I face, because I am giving credit to hundreds of households in that apartment. It was a big apartment, and I have to run after everyone to collect my money back, and I have to have arguments with people on like what amounts and all of that. So it's a bigger problem for me. And we agreed. We said, yes, seems like it's a bigger problem for you, and we can make something to help solve that problem for you. So from there, convincing them to finally use the product was a big challenge, because we came up with a product. It had some very fancy UX that would appeal to us because we are like very active phone users. But when we went to him, it didn't work for him. So we had to do 2 or 3 iterations of the UX. Then like what we realized was that this person is not in the shop all the time, right? And we also have to make our UX in a way that the employee, the chotu, right, which who is in the shop all the time, would understand, because otherwise he would just keep on writing in the book and the app will never be adopted. So then we changed the UX more, made it like very less alphabets, number first, because the employee could not understand a lot of alphabets, he could only understand numbers, so we made it number first, made it in vernacular language, stuff like that. Then after once he was comfortable with the UX, other kind of problems arose, right? He would not trust the calculation of the app. He would say, I don't know if the app does correct calculation, right? And so for a while he wrote everything in the app, and simultaneously he wrote everything in the notebook, right? And he would tally at the end of each day that whether the app is showing the same calculations which my book is showing, because he did not have that trust. He did not have that trust that, hey, what happens tomorrow if my phone dies, or if for some reason someone deletes the app, or the app just disappears from my phone, where will I get my data? Because this is super important data. This is the data that he has to collect money from, so and so, right? So he wouldn't trust that. So we like started a daily habit of sending him PDF reports on his email ID, so that even if you lose your data, or even if the app disappears, you won't lose anything. Your work would still continue. So that happened. Then like a lot of stuff, right? Like then stuff like, hey, what will my data be shared with the income tax or government, and how's that? So we had to bring him to trust that, hey, this is all private, encrypted, it's not going to be shared with anyone, this is just your data. So I think like, we faced a lot of challenges, but finally we stuck through it, and finally were able to convince him that using this is better for your business. And then he started using it. So that was difficult, but like having spent that 1 or 2 months on him, I think the advantage we got was, once he started using it and was happy, he himself recommended this to his brother, who ran a kirana shop in some other locality. And for us to onboard him was relatively easier. He also had those questions, but the trust transferred, like from the brother to brother. This guy was not so untrustworthy of the calculations or of the data, right? Because he already knew his brother is using it and is quite happy with that. So I think like this was the key learning, that because we have invested so much time with him, I think like we now have to grow in his network itself, so that we don't have to spend the same amount of time with every new onboarding we have to do. And then like we got referrals from him. Once the other people who he referred to were happy, then we got referrals from them. So we always worked on the referral model for the first 100 odd merchants, because that is how we could build that trust.
Yeah. So again, I'm going a little. I think I'm going back to the growth per se, in the sense that, so the first 100 maybe referral, and maybe you grow from 100 to 1,000, and then what happens when let's say you have 100,000 people on your platform? So after that point, like how does the growth work, in the sense? Is it referrals, or is it just marketing, or?
Yeah. So see, like even at 100,000 merchants, like we didn't start marketing then. We had always believed, and like this is also one of our USPs, right? Like if you look at all the other MSME companies who were at that time, everyone had a feet on street sales agent who would go out to the shop, explain the benefits of the software, sell it. What we did was, we made a product-led growth engine, right? So basically, say if I'm a wholesaler, right, who records credit on 10 different retailers. Now, each of those 10 retailers get a WhatsApp or SMS notification saying that, hey, Harsh Wholesalers has recorded a 10,000 rupees credit on you. And here is where you can see your latest balance. So now all of these 10 retailers get curious on what OKCredit is. So they would either ask the wholesaler, ki, yaar, ye kya hai? Or they would just themselves, click the link and see what's OKCredit. And then they would realize, yeah, it's useful for my business also, because I'm also giving credit to people. I should also record that and send reminders and stuff, right? So it works as a chain, right? Like, so as we had more and more users, more and more counterparties started to get notifications, and that is how like we grew without having to have any feet on street or doing marketing. But after that, when we raised our Series A, and we got a bunch of capital, that is when we decided, ki, chalo yaar, we have this in-product virality, which is anyway working, and we are seeing growth. Why not fuel that? By adding more money on top. Like do marketing, branding. As more and people know, our virality will increase even more. So that's how we grew in terms of users from say 100,000 to a million, and now 3 million. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on marketing in general? Like, I mean, how effective do you think marketing is? Like, and are people paying too much attention to marketing, or too less? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I think marketing is super important. I'm not going to talk about the modes of marketing: paid, digital. I think marketing there, it's like if you have a business, I think marketing your business is super important. Now there are different ways of doing that, and I can talk about. I think like people spend, once they've raised money, they spend a lot of attention on paid marketing. Google, Facebook ads, digital ads, or like all of that. But and I feel it's very addictive, and maybe not the best thing you can do to your startup, because once you have money, you can just spend that money, get more users. But unless you are doing it very effectively and being honest with yourselves that what are the ROIs I'm getting, what are my customer acquisition costs are going, it can be just like detrimental to your startup, because you will continue to spend money, you will continue to see growth, but it's not coming at the right ROI, and sooner or later it will cap, right? What I have seen is that initially maybe you'll get good results, but as your scale grows, your cost of acquisitions will like just go through the roof, and it will then become unsustainable for you to grow any further. And in the meantime, if you haven't spent effort to build other sources of distribution which are more CAC friendly, then you are going to have a hard time, because that is when you'll have to reset everything and build those distribution channels. So,
Did you grow like? Did you guys face like a very steep growth in the sense like did growth come very happen very fast for you or?
yeah, very fast. So as I said, so one of the things I spoke about, the in product virality, right? That as more people use OKCredit, more people get notifications, and as more people get notifications, some of them convert to using OKCredit themselves. So because of this, initially our growth was like super exponential, because it was a new thing, and just people was just hearing about it for the first time. So that was there, and then when we put money on top to marketing, like it just went crazy exponential. But as more, but now what I would say, because a lot of people already know about OKCredit, so that novelty factor, or that new that factor is decreasing. So that organic growth is not as fast as it used to be earlier, but still like we focus only on organic channels, and still we are growing.
Initially when it was growing very like you mentioned exponentially, was it difficult for you to manage? I mean, systems internally, and was there a lot of? Can you maybe speak about that?
Yeah, I specifically remember one incident, which was, so as I said, we had reached around 50 100 merchants, and at that time our mode of operation was that we did not have the app on Play Store. Right. And what we would do is, or we would go to the merchant, whoever showed interest, and because it was mostly referrals, we would go to their shop, we would transfer the APK to them through a share it or something, and we will create a username password for them from the backend and give it to them so that they can start using. So the app did not have sign up option or stuff like that. But and we were doing this, and there was my phone number on the app. Right, that in case of any problems, you can call this. Then suddenly, I started getting a lot of phone calls, and from unknown numbers, and people would say, "Ki mujhe bhi OK credit ka account banana hai. I also want an account." And I would say, "How did you? The app is not on Play Store. How did you get the app?" So he said that my friend shared the APK with me. Right. So people, like, what we realized was that people were because people found it useful and wanted to share it with their friends who also wanted to use it. They were just sharing APKs because it was not on Play Store. And once they got the APK, there was no option to sign up, so they were stuck there. And very quickly, the situation reached where I would wake up with a phone call, and this was again in ShareChat office. I would wake up and I would see missed calls on my phone, and some number calling. And by the time I would sleep, I would just be answering people's phone calls. That acha mera account bana do, mera account bana do. And when people call you, they call you for they want to talk for 15-20 minutes. They would be like, acha aap kaun ho, aap ye app kyun bana rahe ho, is this paid, what will you use the data for, ye kaise hoga, kya hoga. Like, they want to understand so many things, right? So that, yes, so it of course became difficult for us to manage as we scaled, because we would just spend entire time answering customer queries, making accounts for them. So that is when we realized ki, we should put this on Play Store, just put a sign up option so that people can sign up themselves, create their account and use it. And we can focus on doing something else.
Do you consider yourself like a? Do you look at yourself as like a sales guy or like more of a tech guy?
I used to code at the start. I used to, I built the Android app, like for example with Aditya. I did some parts of the backend as well. So, and before that, I was into blockchain and cryptocurrency. So I did some tech stuff there too. But while I have a lot of interest in technology, I would shy away from calling myself a techie, because I'm not a hardcore techie. I understand technology well. I can understand the real life applications of it, but I'm not a hardcore techie. I would say in that case, I'm more of a sales person than a tech person.
You have been the CEO for more than 6 years now. In what ways do you think you were a good and bad CEO?
I think a bad CEO in the sense that I think a CEO has to have consistency. I think, like, there have been times in our journey when I flipped on my decisions, right? And again, being a young CEO, it was the first time we had raised capital, and there's so much influence from outside. You're some experienced startup founders telling you stuff, your investors telling you stuff, you're reading stuff, and kind of gets overwhelming, right? On what kind of decisions you have to take. So I would say I've not been very consistent then about how we should be building our business. For example, there might be time when we would say, okay, go all in on marketing and spend a lot of money because we want to be the market leader. But other times we would say, yaar, CAC to bahut zyada ja raha hai, ROI nahi aa raha hai, should we focus on this or monetization, right? And then you would say, nature of monetization to focus karte hai. But फिर थोड़े दिनों बाद, again, because of the pressure of, say, the outside world and investors and everything, we would say, नहीं, चलो फिर से marketing करते हैं, delay monetization for a while. तो उस तरह के कुछ decisions रहे, I would say I haven't been very consistent. I've been flipping between decisions, and if I were more consistent.
Like, so I'm not seeing a big problem in that. Maybe you can just correct me where I'm going wrong with this. In the sense that, I mean, when new information comes in, generally you have to flip. I mean, if let's say you're going to one restaurant and then you decided you're going to a restaurant, but midway you get a call saying that restaurant is closed for renovation for today. I mean, it'll be foolish to go to the restaurant.
But that's not the case, right? Here, it's your company's strategy, right? Like, see, the thing is, you are your decisions impact 100 other people who are working on day-to-day projects. And say at the start of the month they say, hey, we are doing growth, everyone focus on growth, and like this month we are going to grow our users by these many, and we are going to spend on marketing, and everyone's working on something. And mid-month I realize that, hey, this may not be the best option, and instead we should work on monetization. And then telling that to your team, it just confuses them. It tells them, hey, that this the leadership does not have a consistent strategy. And oh, okay, अब ठीक है, मैंने 15 दिन जो भी काम किया, I have to just let it all go and I have to start something else. So it doesn't help them as well. It doesn't help anyone. So I think at least for these long term things, right, the strategy, you should have a very consistent strategy that, hey, this is what we are going to do, and we just stick to it. We just don't flip between strategies basis, like how we feel that particular day.
So the solution for that is you're saying more clarity. Like generally the upper management should have like general clarity on the next few
More
months.
clarity, more debates, more hard conversations, but like alignment, that hey, this is what we are going to do. If there's no alignment, if your team, if your co-founder says ki nahi yaar ye hai, I think like more clarity, more debates, over communication, and lot of alignment. Because it affects the downstream people, right? The daily projects they are working on, the work they have done, the plans they have made. It affects everything, and it just jeopardizes, like damages all the work they have done if you're flipping very regularly.
You mentioned, you were pushed into the young CEO role very quickly, very early. Sorry, can you maybe talk a little bit about in what ways, like looking back now, obviously you have the benefit of hindsight. So what could have been done better? Like how can, let's say, if there's a 22-year-old who's becoming a CEO now, like what do you think? Like they should probably follow some rules or something like that.
Again, I think like one thing is having a lot of clarity on what you're going to build, and because your direction determines the direction of the entire company, right? Like what you are talking about, what you are focusing on, what you are telling to your team, like that's going to affect them a lot. So I think like clarity in you is super important, and that emotional stability in you is super important, because that is what feeds everyone. So yeah, I think that's very important. Other than that is like very like information that is out there, right? Like super close to your customers, because that's what defines culture and things. So, but yeah, I've skipped all of that for now.
I'm not too sure about this, but I think you have raised about $90 million to date. I think with the $67 million Series B round. Can you walk me through like how, like what is it like raising rounds? How stressful is it? How important is it? How much time does it take? And what are the implications of maybe once you raise? What are the responsibilities that come with it?
I think that's again a very good point. That which is also like when in the earlier rounds we did not really understand like the kind of expectations that come to you when you raise big rounds, and your valuation jumps, because as you raise larger and larger money, your deliverables to your investors become bigger, and that kind of pressure, if not managed well, can break your startup. It can even kill your startup, because now you have unrealistic expectations that you have to deliver, because you already raised so much money at say at a $500 million valuation, and now the next jump is a unicorn, and to be a unicorn there are certain things you have to achieve. So and that kind of pressure can burn you out, can damage your team, can just become unrealistic and kill your startup. So I think like it's super important to understand that like what kind of expectations are coming with the money you are going to raise, and being again more mature about.
On the expectations, I mean, but those are very transparent. No, you don't think? I mean, I'm sure the investors tell the founders or people involved that I'm giving you X, I expect Y. You're saying it's not like that, is it? Like,
No, it's not, right? First of all, see, even investors change a lot, right? Like investors are also very much driven by market sentiment and what others in the ecosystem are saying. So today they might say X, but tomorrow they may say Y, like any other human, because they also are, they're not on the driving seat, right? They don't understand about the business in that much detail as a founder does. So they have their own views, and they would change those views. And but the overall expectation is that, hey, we have put in so much money at this price, and the overall expectation is that like you have to raise the next round at even higher valuation. And for that, there are strategy discussions which may change all of that, and hey, you have to deliver this much revenue, you have to deliver this much user growth, and that may change, right? Because for them the only metric that matters is ki agla round kitne valuation pe raise hua, right? Because that is how they will be able to show to their LPs that, hey, we invested in a company, it has doubled, right? So our money has doubled, and that it will enable them to raise money even more easily. So for them, that's the metric that matters, and it just keeps on changing. Sometimes they'll say, "Yaar, revenue karo to milega, nahi revenue chodo, growth karo to milega." Like 5 other products bana do to milega, because there's so much competition in the market. So there's so many companies, so you build 5 more products, kill all those companies, and that is when you. So things keep on changing, and if you, so basically what I'm saying is, when you're raising capital, you have to understand that you are subscribing to someone else's expectation, and that expectation setting, if you can do well, that's great. And if you can take a more mature decision कि यार नहीं मैं इतना expectations नहीं deliver कर पाऊंगा, I'm happy taking a lesser amount of capital at a lesser valuation, but I'll grow more slowly and gradually, which will build my fundamentals more, and like this is what I am comfortable with. I think that's a great way to think about it.
So if let's say a company works on a particular product for let's say a number of months, and for whatever reason, let's say initially they made some assumptions and those assumptions turned out to be false, or just the market changed for whatever reasons, maybe that product is not it does not work anymore for whatever reason, and now already the team has spent a number of months and a lot of work has gone into it.
Yeah.
So when somebody pulls the plug on that product,
Yeah.
how can the leader or how can
Yeah.
the management align the company for a new direction, or maybe even getting through, because let's say I work on that product, I'll feel a little invested in that product, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, no, definitely. So I agree. So I think the question is around change management. That how do you drive change, in a company? And see, I think like what I have learned after having been through it 2 or 3 times now is that the most important thing is to be transparent, right? And tell your employees the reason why you are doing this, right? And I think involving them in decision making is also super important, right? When they feel that, hey, okay, I understand the reason why the company is doing this, why this is beneficial for the company in the long run. Yes, we experimented on a certain product or did certain things, but it did not work. And like now we have to change, and why it is important for the company, that's most important for people to understand. When they understand that, then you have to involve them in the decision making process, that hey, now that we are going to make this change, how do we do it? Or like every people have certain things, right? So involving them in the decision process, get HR को involve किया कि hey, what do you think, how should we think about employees, how should we redistribute them to different teams, we should talk to the product manager कि यार ये तो नहीं चला, but insights निकाल के what is the next thing that we can do, which is in direction to what we want to do. So involving everyone, I think that helps. And then I think finally, reinforcement or rewards is what I would say, is that celebrate every small success, which then help, which when you are going in the new direction. So say for example, when we made a change, we killed a product, we were very transparent, we told everyone the reasons why we are doing it, we involved everyone in the decision making process, but still I would say we didn't get 100% buy-in, because people still have that confusion. But then the thing we did is every month we would have a team meeting, an entire team meeting, and then we would celebrate the wins, that hey, like हम इस डायरेक्शन में जा रहे थे, देखो ये इंप्रूवमेंट हुआ और इससे हमारी कंपनी का रेवेन्यू बढ़ गया, ग्रोथ बढ़ गया, runway बढ़ गया, जो भी, right? And just doing it continuously month over month, or every fortnight, and once you do it like say 5-6 times, people would just forget कि अच्छा वो change हुआ था, people, everyone would be bought in with you कि हाँ हमने direction change किया है, now the direction is going well and we are doing well. So I think like it's about being transparent and reinforcing, rewarding that success continuously.
When COVID hit, was COVID a positive for you guys, or was it a
It was a very negative at the start, because all the shops were closed, and like people were not transacting. It was very difficult. So like our like transactions recorded on our platform dropped by around 50-60%. uh, right, only the essential categories, like say medicines or kiranas, or, like, were still open, but even their transactions had dropped. But like the non-essentials were like completely shut. It was like very, very bad that time. uh, and like even in times of uncertainty, people give less credit, right? You don't even know that if the person you're giving credit to will stay alive or not, right? So people like had held back on the credit they were giving, and like we record all credit transactions, so it was really bad. But once the lockdown started to ease up, like we started seeing our activities go back, and then the long term thinking happened, that people realized that they have to, because they had seen a situation like COVID, they realized that they also need to make their business online, so that if any such situations arises again, like they at least have some online tools to continue running their business in a business as usual state at least. So that is when we started seeing more demand for online tools or business management tools, which then impacted us positively. So
so initially it was a bit negative, and then but overall
yeah,
would you say it's positive because of the digital, I mean, adoption, like?
yeah. Overall, because now after that, like it took us some time, but at least after 6 to 8 months, we had recovered completely. Our transactions were again crossing more than our pre-COVID peaks. So we had recovered, and yes, people understood the importance of digital. I think the digital adoption, just accelerated during that time, right? What would have happened in 2 or 3 years happened in a few months. So yeah, so that's a positive overall.
The data that you hold, I mean, you mentioned the transaction data that you might have. I think you touched upon this earlier as well. How important has that been in terms of like maybe coming up with new products or new services? Like, is it super useful, or?
Yes, like especially for our lending. See, it is like we have different kinds of data, right? Like on our users. The number one data is transactions, the kind of cash flows. That what are your receivables, what are your payables, how's your business health doing, right? That's one data. The second is more behavioral data, which is around the discipline of that person, right? Because we see here every day, what time does he open the shop, what time does he closes, what's the kind of transactions he does every day, what's his kind of discipline and organized thing. That's another data. Then the third data is more around network data, right? Which is that who trusts this guy, because see, anyone who's giving credit, if I'm giving credit to you, I trust you. That is why I'm giving credit to you. So we have this whole social trust graph, right? In a way that I know कि यार इस बंदे को, there are these 10 people who trust this guy, this guy trusts these 10 other people. So we know a whole social graph. And if I know that, hey, this person is really trustworthy, I know because of my data, and this guy trusts this another person, there's a high chance that this guy is also going to be creditworthy. So I think like we have all of this data, which really helps us underwrite our users much better. And And even in terms of feedback loop, it really helps us, because when one person pays us our loan back, it gives us an entire signal on his network. यार ये बंदा क्रेडिट वर्दी है और इस पे ये 10 लोग क्रेडिट trust कर रहे हैं, he's trusting these 10 other guys, so there's high chance. So I think, like, yeah, like our data definitely helps us in lending as of now. There are other things that we have like ideas on, we haven't really worked on, but a lot of these transactions involves transaction details like images, bill images, transaction notes. So we have a lot of information on what products are being sold in what locality, so which products are doing well, which are not doing well, and how to use that information to maybe work with an FMCG player. But that is still not something we are focused on yet.
AI, like machine learning and AI, I feel like are all the hype these days.
Yeah.
Has it been like, I mean, you spoke about a lot of data with you. Has it been useful for you guys in terms of maybe providing value for customers or in general just to improve workflow per se? Has it been useful? Or?
The most ML and AI that we are using is again on our lending side to underwrite users basic using the data we have. So it's helped us there. In terms of user experience, what I would say is that we did a voice first UX, where anyone who's not comfortable recording transactions or like through keyboard can just use our voice input कि हर्ष पे 500 रुपए का उधार डाल दो, and that would just add a credit on me for 500 rupees. So that's something where we saw people appreciating us for that kind of UX. But again, it's like super difficult. We're still in works to make that happen in other languages as well, because our app is in 14 different languages. So it's quite a work. But yeah, that is where I see like AI could help us.
So on the 14 languages, like, I mean, we don't, me and you, or at least I don't pay much attention to like, I know English and I can read, so I don't pay much attention, like everything's in English, so I take it for granted. But like the other day I was sitting in the restaurant and there was this guy who was sitting opposite to me, and I was having my coffee, and in the middle of my coffee, he points me his phone and he's like, "Can you just translate this to me?" It was like, "Come home" at something or some number, and so but he couldn't read English, so he was asking me to translate, and that's when I realized like so many people really can't interface with these phones and these apps. How big of a challenge is this? Like, I mean, did you underestimate the challenge, or is it too big of a challenge, or how do you kind of think about this?
I think like it's a big enough opportunity to build an app in vernacular language, and I see two parts to it, right? One is like there are a lot of people like you and me who understand Hindi, understand English, and are okay, using the app, but they are looking for vernacular content because that is what they enjoy, right? I understand English, but I may like looking at Gujarati movies or Gujarati songs, right? Because that is something which I enjoy. So like I think vernacular, even for English Hindi speakers, works well because you can give them content which they like. For people who do not understand English Hindi and can only use the app in vernacular language, I think that's a big enough population, and especially we see that in South India a lot. So that with the penetration there, like since we started our vernacular offerings, like the penetration really started to improve. Because at least in North India, a lot of people know Hindi or English, but in South India or even Northeast, I think the language barrier is more.
How long do you see yourself? Like, I mean, do you see like the next decade as well running OKCredit, or do you see some other things planned for you?
No, definitely. I see the next decade running OKCredit and building this into a very large financial institution. So I see that. But yes, on the sides, I also want to try more stuff, do other things. And
What do you do in your weekends? Like, I mean, Saturday, Sunday, like, what do you like to?
I like traveling a lot. So I usually travel. But on yeah, so but I do not do weekend travels. I generally do 1 week, 2 week travels. So I'll do that. Otherwise, I would read books. I think I like reading books, and hanging out with friends. I like hanging out with people a lot. So like whenever I get a chance, I would just go visit someone and chill with them.
Is there something that you really like to do but you don't get time, or
Yeah, I really enjoy playing or sports, but these days I'm not really getting a chance to do that again, because of the busyness. But I have to find time. I think it's only on me.
Just on this, like, I mean, can you talk a little bit about like work life in the sense like how intense is it like running a startup, or how much of your do you work like crazy hours, or do you not get time to do any other things? Like, how are you gonna balance this out?
Yeah, it's like a roller coaster, honestly, right? Like some days I get enough time to think and introspect and focus on other things and like make plans or even travel. But certain days or weeks are like really heavy, where for example, if you're going for a new partnership and like we have to prepare and pitch, and so like, if we are in that mode, like it's the entire week or weeks where we are working very long hours. If it's about investments or investors board meetings, team meetings, appraisals, and that time, like that time is crazy hectic because there's so many people in the company and you have to talk to. And at least like in our company, we make sure that we talk to each and every person, get their views, how are they feeling, their ideas and stuff. So yeah, like those. So again, it's a roller coaster, I would say. Certain days it's like completely packed, no time. Certain days you get some time. But I like to be busy, so even when I get time, I would just make myself busy into something or the other.
On that note, Harsh, thank you for taking time. It was wonderful having you. Thank you so much.
Same here. Thank you for inviting.